Imagine you are in the middle of a critical project. Maybe you are editing a video, compiling code, or just finishing a deep research session for your degree. Suddenly, the screen flickers. A giant blue box appears, telling you that your computer needs to restart for updates. You click Stay, you click Remind Me Later, but Windows doesn't care about your deadlines. 10 minutes later, your machine forcibly reboots. Your unsaved work vanishes into the digital void, and when you finally get back to your desktop, the first thing you see is an advertisement for a subscription service you never asked for, pinned right to your taskbar. For me, that was the final straw. After 2 decades of being a loyal Windows user, surviving the transition from XP to 7, and even the mess of Windows 8, the latest Windows 11 update has officially broken my trust, my workflow, and my patience. This week I am doing something I thought I would never do. I am wiping my primary drive and moving to Linux for good. This isn't just a minor annoyance with a bug or a glitch. It is a fundamental shift in how Microsoft treats its users, and today I'm going to tell you exactly why the latest update was the tipping point, and why millions of us are realizing that the grass really is greener on the open source side. The problem started with the recent integration of AI and telemetry features that feel more like spyware than helpful tools. We've seen Microsoft push the envelope before, but the latest Windows 11 update introduced a level of system-level monitoring that should make anyone concerned about privacy feel very uncomfortable. They call it improving the user experience, but when your operating system starts taking snapshots of your screen every few seconds and sending metadata back to a central server, we have passed the point of no return. I used to feel like my computer was a private sanctuary, a tool that I owned and controlled. Now it feels like I am renting a device from a landlord who insists on keeping a camera in the living room just to make sure I am using the furniture correctly. But it's not just the privacy invasion. The technical stability of Windows 11 has taken a massive hit. The latest update managed to break a significant portion of the driver compatibility that worked perfectly fine a week ago. I woke up to find my secondary monitor not being recognized, my audio interface producing a constant crackling sound, and my internal search bar simply refusing to function. When you go to the forums to find a solution, the only advice you get is to perform a clean install or wait for a patch that might or might not come in 3 weeks. People who use their computers for work cannot afford to be beta testers for a multi-billion-dollar corporation that treats its flagship product like a side project. Switching to Linux used to be a scary prospect. I remember trying it 10 years ago and spending 3 days just trying to get the Wi-Fi card to work. But the Linux of today is a completely different beast. I spent the last 48 hours testing various distributions like Linux Mint and Pop! OS, and I was shocked. Everything worked out of the box. No drivers to hunt down, no forced restarts, and most importantly, no advertisements in my start menu. The speed difference alone is enough to make you rub your eyes in disbelief. Windows 11 has become so bloated with background processes, telemetry trackers, and pre-installed garbage that we have forgotten how fast our hardware actually is. Running Linux on a modern machine feels like taking the weighted vest off after a 10-mile run. You realize that your CPU and RAM were being held hostage by an operating system that cares more about tracking your interests than running your apps. Let's talk about the hardware requirements. Windows 11 famously left millions of perfectly good computers in the scrap heap because they didn't have a specific TPM chip. This wasn't because the computers couldn't run a modern OS. It was a move to push people into buying new hardware. Linux, on the other hand, embraces older hardware. It treats your machine with respect. You can take a laptop from 5 years ago that is struggling to open a browser on Windows and turn it into a lightning-fast workstation by installing a lightweight Linux distro. In a world where we are trying to be more sustainable and reduce e-waste, Microsoft's strategy of forced obsolescence is not just annoying, it's ethically questionable. The psychological toll of being a Windows user in 2024 is something we don't talk about enough. We have become conditioned to expect things to go wrong. We expect the blue screen. We expect the slow boots. We expect the pop-ups asking us to switch to the Edge browser for the 100th time. When you move to Linux, that background noise of anxiety disappears. You open your computer, it turns on in 5 seconds, and it stays exactly how you left it. There is no corporate board deciding that they want to rearrange your icons or change your settings to help their quarterly earnings. You are the master of your machine. This sense of digital sovereignty is something I didn't realize I was missing until I experienced it. A lot of people say, but what about the software? What about Adobe or Office? Here is the truth. Most of the professional world has moved to the web or has found better open-source alternatives. For office work, only Office and Google Workspace are more than enough. For creative work, tools like DaVinci Resolve run natively on Linux and are incredibly powerful. Even gaming, which was the final bastion of Windows dominance, has been revolutionized. Thanks to Valve and the Steam Deck, the vast majority of my Steam library runs perfectly on Linux through a layer called Proton. I can play heavy AAA titles with the same or better frame rates than on Windows, without the operating system stealing 20% of my resources in the background. The final straw for me was the realization that Microsoft is no longer a software company. They are an advertising and data company. Every feature they have added to Windows 11 lately has been about monetization. The weather widget that takes you to a clickbait-filled news site? Monetization. The suggested apps in your app list? Advertising. The insistence on using a Microsoft account just to log into your own computer? Data harvesting. When you pay $100 for an operating system license, you shouldn't be treated like a product. Linux is built by the community, for the community. The developers are users themselves. They want a system that works, not a system that sells. Making the switch this week has been a revelation. The installation process for a modern Linux distro is actually faster and easier than installing Windows. You don't have to click through 10 pages of privacy settings where you have to opt out of being tracked. You just choose your language, your keyboard layout, and you are done. The desktop environments are beautiful and highly customizable. If you want it to look like a Mac, you can. If you want it to look like Windows 7, you can. If you want something entirely new with tiling windows and keyboard shortcuts for everything, you can do that too. The freedom of choice is exhilarating. I want you to think about all the time you have spent troubleshooting Windows issues over the last year, adding up all those minutes of waiting for updates, fixing broken settings, and clearing out bloatware. Now imagine you get all that time back. What could you build? What could you learn? A computer should be an extension of your mind, not a hurdle you have to jump over every morning. The latest Windows 11 update didn't just break my drivers. It broke the illusion that we need Microsoft to have a productive life on a PC. We don't. The alternative is ready, it is stable, and it is waiting for you. This transition isn't just about me being a tech nerd who likes to tinker. This is about a broader movement of people who are tired of the enshittification of the digital world. We are seeing it everywhere, from social media platforms to streaming services, and now to our very operating systems. Everything is becoming more expensive, more intrusive, and less useful. Switching to Linux is a peaceful protest. It is a way of saying that I do not consent to being tracked. I do not consent to being advertised to in my own workspace, and I do not consent to my hardware being made obsolete by a software update. If you are on the fence, I encourage you to just try it. You don't even have to delete Windows yet. You can put Linux on a USB stick and boot from it to see how it feels. See if your hardware is recognized. See how fast the browser opens. Search for your favorite apps in the software center. I think you will be pleasantly surprised at how far things have come. The community is incredibly helpful, and there are guides for every possible niche use case you can imagine. The more I use Linux, the more I realize that Windows has been gaslighting us for years. It made us believe that computers are inherently complicated and prone to failure, but they aren't. It's the layers of corporate greed and legacy code piled on top of each other that create the mess. Linux is lean, it is clean, and it is focused. My laptop battery now lasts 30% longer because it isn't constantly pinging servers in Redmond or scanning my drive for telemetry data. My fan barely ever turns on because the CPU isn't being stressed by 40 different background services I never asked for. We are living in a time where our digital lives are just as important as our physical lives. We spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day in front of these screens. The environment we choose to inhabit matters. Choosing Linux is like moving from a noisy, polluted city where you are constantly being followed by billboards to a quiet, clean house in the countryside where you have complete privacy. It's a shift in mindset as much as it is a shift in technology. I know some of you will stay on Windows because of that one specific piece of software you need for work, and I get it. But for the rest of us, the 70 or 80% of users who spend their time in a browser, a code editor, or a communication app, there is no longer a valid reason to stay. Microsoft has shown us their hand. They have shown us that they prioritize their ad revenue over our user experience. They have shown us that they will force updates and AI features on us whether we want them or not. Believe them when they show you who they are. This week, as I finish the migration and move my files over, I feel a sense of relief I haven't felt in tech for a long time. I feel like I am finally in control of my digital destiny. No more worrying about what the next update will break. No more wondering who is watching my screen. Just me and my computer, working together the way it was always supposed to be. If you are tired of the Windows cycle, if you are fed up with the latest update that seems to have broken everything, then maybe it's time for you to make the switch too. It's not as hard as you think, and the reward is a faster, safer, and more respectful computing experience. Looking back, the signs were always there. We saw the integration of OneDrive getting more aggressive. We saw the taskbar becoming more locked down. We saw the system settings becoming a maze of confusing options. The latest update was just the final brick in a wall that Microsoft has been building around its users for years. But that wall has a door, and it's called the Linux kernel. Millions of developers around the world have spent 30 years making sure that door stays open for anyone who wants to walk through it. I am not saying Linux is perfect. No software is. You will have to learn a few new ways of doing things. You might have to find a different app for one or two tasks, but the learning curve is a small price to pay for the freedom you get in return. And the best part? Once you learn it, that knowledge belongs to you. It's not going to be made irrelevant by a corporate rebranding or a change in a terms of service agreement. Linux is a global standard that isn't going anywhere. So, here I am. Day 4 of my Linux journey, and I am never going back. My workflow is faster, my system is more secure, and I feel a renewed passion for technology that Windows had managed to stifle with its constant nagging and bloat. The latest update was a blessing in disguise because it was the push I needed to finally leave the nest. If your Windows 11 machine is acting up, if you are seeing ads where they shouldn't be, if your privacy feels like a suggestion rather than a right, then come join us. The water is fine, the community is great, and the freedom is something you have to experience to truly understand. The transition feels like waking up from a long, confusing dream. You remember the frustration. You remember the hours lost to troubleshooting. But now that you are in the light, you can't believe you stayed in the dark for so long. Every time I see a news article about the latest Windows vulnerability or the next forced AI feature, I just smile and look at my clean, efficient desktop. I am no longer a part of that ecosystem. I am no longer a data point for a marketing team. I am just a guy with a computer that does exactly what I tell it to do. I want to thank the Linux community for the incredible work they have done. Without the thousands of hours of volunteer labor, this migration would be impossible. They have built a world-class operating system that rivals and in many ways exceeds the multi-billion-dollar products of the corporate giants. They have proven that collaboration and open communication are more powerful than any corporate department. By switching to Linux, I am supporting that philosophy. I am contributing to a world where technology is a shared human heritage, not a guarded secret. If you are a student, a gamer, a developer, or just someone who uses a computer to browse the web, there has never been a better time to switch. The tools have reached a level of maturity that makes the old arguments against Linux completely obsolete. Don't let the fear of the unknown keep you in an abusive relationship with your operating system. You deserve better. You deserve a computer that works for you, not against you. Take the plunge, make the switch, and tell Microsoft that your privacy and your time are not for sale. This week has been the beginning of a new chapter for me. My computer is no longer a source of stress. It's a source of joy again. I am discovering new tools, learning new ways to optimize my work, and feeling the excitement of being part of a global movement toward open technology. The Windows 11 update that broke everything was actually the update that fixed my relationship with my PC. It was the wake-up call I needed. And if you are hearing that same call, don't ignore it. The world of Linux is ready for you, and trust me, you are going to love it here. Think about the sheer power of decentralization. On Windows, if Microsoft decides to change how your file manager works, you have to deal with it. On Linux, if you don't like how your file manager works, you just install a different one. You can choose from dozens of different desktop environments. You can choose how much memory your system uses. You can choose exactly which packages are installed. This granular control is the ultimate safeguard against the enshittification we see in the rest of the tech industry. It is the only way to ensure that your tools remain efficient and focused on your needs. I've heard people say that Linux is only for people who want to spend all day in the terminal. That is perhaps the biggest myth of all. I have spent most of my time this week never even opening a terminal. I use a graphical app store to install software. I use a familiar file explorer, and I use a settings menu that makes sense. The terminal is there if I want it for advanced tasks, and it is incredibly powerful, but it is not a requirement for daily use. Modern Linux is as much a point-and-click experience as any other OS, just without the frustration. The security model of Linux is also fundamentally superior for the average person, because you don't run as an administrator by default, and because the software comes from trusted, verified repositories. The risk of accidentally installing malware is almost zero. You don't need a heavy, expensive antivirus program slowing down your computer. The system is designed from the ground up to be secure and stable. This peace of mind is invaluable. As I wrap up my first full week on this new system, my only regret is that I didn't do it sooner. I stayed on Windows out of habit and fear. I thought the transition would be too hard. I thought I would miss my old apps. But the reality is that I don't miss any of it. I don't miss the telemetry. I don't miss the forced updates. I don't miss the advertisements. And most importantly, I don't miss the feeling that my computer was constantly fighting me. If you have stayed with me through this long journey, thank you. I hope my story inspires you to look at your own relationship with technology. Are you the master or the servant? Does your software respect you? If the answer is no, then remember that there is another way. The Linux migration is happening, and it is powered by millions of people who have reached the same conclusion I have. The future of computing is open, it is private, and it is in your hands. This week, I took my first step into that future, and I can honestly say I've never been happier with my tech. Windows 11 might have broken everything, but Linux fixed it, and in the process, it reminded me why I loved computers in the first place. See you in the open source world.